Good morning, everyone. It is 10:03 a.m., and we're going to go ahead and commence the ACIP meeting. Today is September 22nd, and this is our third emergency meeting to discuss COVID-19 vaccines. Next slide. The slides that are presented today are available on the ACIP website until 5 p.m. today. These slides are not 508 compliant at this time, so this evening the slides will be removed and they will be put back up once they're 508 compliant. Additionally, slides are available through a share file link for ACIP voting, liaison, and ex officio members. Next slide. So we will post the final meeting slides, likely probably before 4 weeks after the meeting. We'll also post live webcast videos on the ACIP website, and meeting minutes will be posted on the ACIP website generally within 120 days of the meeting. Next slide. A few notes on the meeting logistics for those of you who are listening in on the Zoom line. Please mute your lines at all times unless you're called on for discussion. When Dr. Romero opens the meeting for discussion, please virtually raise your hand. And during the discussion period, Dr. Romero will take questions first from voting ACIP members and then from ex officio members and liaison representatives. We'll stay on schedule per the meeting agenda, so even if we're running early, we will start our next sessions and take longer breaks. And we ask that all people on the Zoom link please disable your video. In order to ensure we have a proper connection. I also want to welcome all of those people who are watching the Zoom call from the live webcast. Next slide. Our next regularly scheduled 2020 ACIP meeting will also be virtual, and that will be October 28th through 29th, 2020. Next slide. This meeting's oral and written public comment processes are designed to accommodate increased public interest in ACIP's work, maximize opportunities for comment, make public comment more transparent and efficient, and create a fair process for assigning limited oral public comment time. For this meeting, we'll be holding one oral public comment period this afternoon. The oral public comment period will occur at approximately 3:45 p.m. Additionally, we will have written public comments available via regulations.gov using the docket number ID CDC/2020/0093. Information on the written public comment process, including information on how to make a comment, can be found at the ACIP meeting website. Next slide. As noted in the ACIP Policies and Procedures Manual, members of the ACIP agree to forego participation in certain activities related to vaccines during their tenure on the committee. For certain other interests that potentially enhance a member's expertise, CDC has issued limited conflict of interest waivers. Members who conduct vaccine clinical trials and serve on state data safety monitoring boards may present to the committee on matters related to those vaccines, but they're prohibited from participating in committee votes. Regarding other vaccines of the concerned company, a member may participate in the discussions with the provision that he or she abstains from all votes related to that company. At the beginning of each ACIP meeting, members will state any conflicts of interest, and additionally, any conflicts of interest will be stated again prior to each vote. At today's ACIP meeting, we will not be having any votes. I apologize, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Amanda Cohn. I'm the designated federal official for ACIP, and I'm now going to hand over the phone to Dr. Jose Romero, who is our current chair of ACIP, to take roll call. Dr. Romero?
Good morning, thank you, Dr. Cohn. So we will take roll call. I will call your name going in alphabetical order. Please state your presence, your affiliation, and any conflicts that you may have. So I'll begin. I'm Jose Romero, Secretary of Health, Professor of Pediatrics and Infectious Disease at the University of Arkansas for Medical Science. No conflicts of interest. Dr. Atmar.
Hi, I'm Robert Atmar, Professor of Infectious Diseases at Baylor College of Medicine. I'm a co-director of the Clinical Operations Unit of the NIH-funded Infectious Diseases Clinical Research Consortium that is working within the COVID-19 Prevention Network to evaluate SARS-CoV-2 vaccine candidates in phase 3 clinical trials, including those produced by Moderna, AstraZeneca, Janssen, Novavax, and Sanofi. Over.
Thank you. Dr. Alt.
My name is Kevin Alt, and I'm a professor of obstetrics and gynecology at the University of Kansas Medical Center in Kansas City, Kansas, and I have no conflict.
Ms. Bata.
Hey, this is Lynn Bata. I'm a public health nurse and serve as the clinical immunization consultant at the Minnesota Department of Health, and I have no conflict.
Thank you. Dr. Bell.
This is Beth Bell. I'm a clinical professor at the University of Washington, and I have no conflicts.
Thank you. Dr. Bernstein.
Good morning. I'm Hank Bernstein. I am a professor of pediatrics at the Zucker School of Medicine at Hofstra Northwell, and I have no conflicts.
Thank you. Dr. Fry.
Good morning. This is Sharon Fry. I am a professor of internal medicine at St. Louis University, and we have a vaccine treatment evaluation unit here, and we'll be working and am working currently with the CoVPN, which is the COVID Vaccine Prevention Network, on the Moderna trial, and anticipate working on the Janssen trial and others in the future.
Thank you. Dr. Hunter.
Paul Hunter, Associate Professor of Family Medicine and Community Health at the University of Wisconsin. I own a small amount of Pfizer stock and have a small grant from Pfizer to do quality improvement project on pneumococcal vaccines. Over.
Thank you. Dr. Lee.
Grace Lee. I'm Associate Chief Medical Officer at Stanford Children's Health, Professor of Pediatrics at Stanford University School of Medicine, and I have no conflicts of interest.
Thank you. Ms. McNally.
Good morning. Veronica McNally. I'm president of the Franny Strong Foundation in Michigan, and I have no conflicts.
Thank you. Dr. Paling.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Paling. I am a professor of pediatrics and epidemiology at Wake Forest School of Medicine, and I have no conflicts.
Thank you. Dr. Sanchez.
I'm Pablo Sanchez. I'm a neonatologist and pediatric infectious disease specialist at Nationwide Children's Hospital and the Ohio State University. I do have grant support from Merck that has ended or is ending, and that's my only one.
Thank you. Dr. Szilagyi.
Hi, Peter Szilagyi. I'm professor and executive vice chair of pediatrics at University of California at UCLA, and I have no conflicts. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Talbot.
Hi, I'm Kip Talbot. I'm Associate Professor of Medicine and Health Policy at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, and I have no conflict.
Thank you. We'll next move on to the ex officio representatives, starting with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Dr. Messonnier.
Nancy Messonnier, NCIRD, CDC.
Thank you. Centers for Medicine and Medicaid Services, Dr. Hance.
Mary Beth Hance from CMS.
Department of Defense, Dr. Schumacher.
This is Captain Brian Schumacher. I'm the DoD liaison to the CDC, active duty Navy family physician. No conflicts of interest.
Thank you. Department of Veterans Affairs, Dr. Kim.
Jane Kim, Department of Veterans Affairs.
Food and Drug Administration, Dr. Fink.
Good morning, Doran Fink, FDA CBER Office of Vaccines.
Health Resources and Services Administration, Dr. Rubin.
Good morning, this is Mary Rubin, HRSA Division of Injury Compensation Programs.
Indian Health Services, Dr. Weiser.
Hi, good morning. This is Jillian Dosswalker. I'm covering for Dr. Tom Weiser today.
Thank you. Office of Infectious Diseases, HIV, AIDS Policy, Dr. Beckman. Office of Infectious Disease and HIV, AIDS Policy, Dr. Beckman.
This is David
Hi,
Kim.
Dr. Beckham, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, Dr. Beckham, representing the Office of Infectious Disease Policy within the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Health.
Thank you. National Institutes of Health, Dr.
Good
Beigel.
morning, John Beigel. John Beigel from the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease.
Thank you very much. I'll move on now to the liaison representatives, starting with the American Academy of Family Physicians. Dr. Rockwell.
Pamela Rockwell, American Academy of Family Physicians.
American Academy of Pediatrics, Dr. Maldonado.
Yes, Yvonne Maldonado, Professor of Pediatrics, Epidemiology and Population Health, and Senior Associate Dean for Faculty Development and Diversity at University of Medicine, Chair of the Committee on Infectious Disease for the American Academy of Pediatrics.
Dr. Kimberlin.
David Kimberlin, editor of the AAP Red Book and at the University of Alabama at Birmingham.
American Academy of Physician Assistants, Dr. Laguerre.
Marie-Michelle Leger, Director of Clinical Education at the APA.
Thank you. American College of Health Association, Dr. Kai. American College of Health Association, Dr. McMullen. We'll come back. American College of Nurse Midwives, Ms. Hayes.
Present.
American College of Nurse Midwives, Ms. Meharry, or Dr. Meharry, forgive me. College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, Dr. O'Neill Eckert.
This is Dr. Linda O'Neill Eckert, and I am present. No conflicts. Thank you.
American College of Physicians, Dr. Goldman.
Dr. Jason Goldman, General Internal Medicine, American College of Physicians, Board of Regents.
American Geriatric Society, Dr. Schmader.
Ken Schmader, American Geriatric Society.
American Immunization Registry Association, Dr. Coyle.
Rebecca Coyle is present.
American Medical Association, Dr. Freihofer.
Sandra Freihofer, Liaison for the American Medical Association.
American Nurses Association, Dr. Riddle.
Chad Riddle here.
American Osteopathic Association, Dr. Grog.
Present.
American Pharmacists Association, Dr. Foster.
This is Steve Foster. I'm here.
Association of Immunization Managers, Dr. Finley.
Chris Finley, present.
Association for Prevention, Teaching and Research, Dr. McKinley.
This is Paul McKinney, University of Louisville School of Public Health and Information Sciences.
Association of State and Territorial Health Officials, Dr. Shaw. Association of State and Territorial Health Officials, Dr. Shaw. We'll come back. Biotechnology Industry Organization, Dr. Arthur.
Phyllis Arthur, present.
Council of State and Territorial Epidemiologists, Dr. Hahn.
Yeah, Dr. Christine Hahn, present.
Canadian National Advisory Committee on Immunization, Dr. Quash.
Yes, Carolyn Quashtan, NACI Chair, present.
Infectious Diseases Society of America, Dr. Baker.
This is Jeff
Carol
Tuchin,
Baker,
Infectious
present.
Diseases Society of America.
International Society for Travel Medicine, Dr. Barnett.
Elizabeth Barnett, Society for Travel.
National Association of County and County and City Health Officials, Dr. Zahn.
Matt Zahn, present.
National Association of County and City Health Officials, alternate, Dr. Dushin.
Dr. Romero, this is Jeff Tuchin. Today I'm representing the Infectious Diseases Society of America.
Thank you. National Association of Pediatric Nurse Practitioners, Dr. Stinchfield. Stinchfield.
Patsy Stinch. Good morning, Patsy Stinchfield, representing NAPNAP. Thank you.
National Foundation for Infectious Diseases.
Dr. Romero, this is Dr. Schaffner. I am the Professor of Health Policy and Infectious Diseases at Vanderbilt and the Medical Director of the National Foundation for Infectious Diseases. Thank you.
Thank you. National Medical Association, Dr. O'Leary. Sorry about that. Skip lines. Once again, National Medical Association, Dr. Whitley Williams. Forgive that error.
Quite all right. Good morning, Dr. Romero. This is Pat Whitley Williams, National Medical Association.
Thank you. Now, Pediatric Infectious Diseases Society, Dr. O'Leary.
Present, and it's a pleasure to be mistaken for Dr. Whitley Williams.
Alternate, Dr. Sawyer. Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, Dr. Robertson.
Good morning, Corey Robertson, present.
Society for Adolescent Health and Medicine, Dr. Middleman.
Good morning, it's Amy Middleman. I'm present.
Society for Health Care Epidemiology of America, Dr. Dries.
Good morning, it's Dr. Dries. I'm present.
Is there anyone that joined later wishes to acknowledge their presence?
This is
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
Robert Gluckman. I'm Chief Medical Officer of Providence Health Plans, and I'm the liaison from AHIP, the American Health Insurance Plans.
Thank you. Anyone else? I will now turn it back over to Dr. Cohn. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. That concludes our introduction for this morning. I think we are ready to move on to the first speaker on the agenda. This will be a coronavirus disease 2019 COVID-19 vaccines session. And we will start off with Dr. Beth Bell, who is the chair of the work group. Thanks.
Good morning to everyone, and thank you all for joining us. This morning I just have a few brief updates that I wanted to provide before we get into the main part of the agenda. Next slide, please. As background, at the August 26th meeting, ACIP reviewed Moderna's mRNA COVID-19 vaccine clinical development and Pfizer-BioNTech's mRNA COVID vaccine clinical development. We had an overview of post-marketing safety surveillance and looked at the epidemiology of individuals at increased risk of severe COVID-19 disease, discussed the workgroup interpretation of some of these findings, and continued in our review of how to prioritize and what the next steps for the workgroup would be. Next, please. Now, since that time, a reminder that we in the workgroup are meeting weekly, and the topics that we covered in August include a review of published COVID-19 vaccine prioritization and allocation frameworks, qualitative research on a future COVID-19 vaccine, the clinical development program for a COVID-19 vaccine, including data from phase 1-2 clinical trials and plans for phase 3 clinical trials, racial and ethnic disparities in COVID-19 testing exposure, severity, and impact, the association between social vulnerability and risk of becoming a COVID-19 hotspot. We began the development of a proposal for an ethics and equity framework for COVID-19 vaccine allocation and had further discussions regarding vaccine allocation. Next. Now, on today's agenda, we'll have two presentations about safety surveillance. First, an overview of COVID-19 vaccine safety by Dr. Grace Lee, who is a member of the ACIP and chairs the vaccine safety subgroup. Dr. Tom Shibabukuro will discuss enhanced vaccine safety surveillance. We'll have a presentation on vaccine implementation from a presenter to be determined, according to my knowledge. We'll discuss disparities in COVID-19 epidemiology by Dr. Megan Wallace, an overview of vaccine equity and prioritization frameworks from Dr. Sarah Oliver, and phase 1 allocation for COVID-19 vaccine workgroup considerations given by Dr. Kathleen Dooling. Next, please. Now, in today's session, in regard to considerations for prioritization of COVID-19 vaccines, in today's session, we're going to have two presentations that are particularly relevant to this part. Disparities among COVID-19 disease and a proposal for ACIP's ethics and equity framework, and a review of groups for allocation of initial COVID-19 vaccine. Now, moving forward into future sessions, we envision continuing to discuss the evidence to recommendation framework for COVID-19 vaccines, to review additional manufacturer data as they become available, and to prepare for independent review of safety and efficacy data from phase 3 clinical trials. Next. I wanted to spend just a couple of minutes with an update of where we are with regard to vaccines currently globally, so that we can sort of fix ourselves in time in terms of how the process is unfolding. There are currently over 200 COVID-19 vaccines under development. In the United States, there are 2 vaccines in phase 3 clinical trials actively enrolling. There is 1 vaccine in phase 3 clinical trials, which is currently on hold. And there are 3 vaccines in phase 1-2 clinical trials that are actively recruiting. The 2 vaccines in phase 3 clinical trials that are actively recruiting are the mRNA 1273 vaccine from Moderna, which reported 25,296 participants enrolled as of September 16th, with 28% of those participants from, quote, diverse communities. The BNT 162b2 vaccine from Pfizer-BioNTech reported 31,928 participants as of September 21st, and 26% of the participants enrolled were reported to be from, quote, diverse backgrounds. And Pfizer-BioNTech has proposed expansion of its clinical trial to 44,000 participants. Next, please. Now, this table shows the vaccines that are in human clinical trials in the United States as of September 14th, 2020. And you'll note the two vaccines that I just talked about, the Moderna vaccine and the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, both of which are mRNA vaccines. Additional vaccines in human clinical trials in the United States include the University of Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, which is currently on hold, and 3 other vaccines that are currently recruiting. The Janssen Pharmaceutical vaccine, which is a viral vector vaccine, non-replicating, Sanofi GSK protein subunit vaccine, and the Novavax protein subunit vaccine. Next. Now, I have a couple of number of tables now that detail the vaccines that are in human clinical trials outside the United States and actively recruiting, organized by the platform of the vaccine. So this is a table of inactivated vaccines that are actively recruiting, and as you can see here, there are 3 candidate vaccines, inactivated vaccines, currently recruiting with trials in a number of countries around the world. Next. This is a table of viral vector vaccines in human clinical trials outside the United States that are actively recruiting. And you can see on this table that there are obviously a number, including the University of Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine and vaccine by Janssen. Most of these is still in phase 1-2 trials, with the exception of the AstraZeneca vaccine and a vaccine manufactured in Russia. Next. These are protein subunit vaccines outside of the United States. And as you'll notice, there's a Novavax protein subunit vaccine and a number of other vaccines that are being studied in Australia, Taiwan, and South Africa. Next. And this is a table of mRNA and DNA vaccines. Again, a number of vaccines being studied in parts of Europe, South Korea, Singapore, Japan, and India. Next. Now, before I close, there's one other topic that I wanted to briefly discuss with this slide, and that is to just provide some clarity about the path forward for ACIP to make and to vote on and make vaccine recommendations. As I've mentioned, currently the work group is meeting weekly, reviewing phase 1-2 data from manufacturers as the data are available, and we are designing a structure for how the independent data review will occur once phase 3 data are available. So once these data are available, the ACIP work group will conduct an independent review of safety and efficacy data using the evidence to recommendations framework and the GRADE system. And based on these data and the review of these data, the work group will present policy options to the full ACIP. Now, ACIP makes recommendations about FDA licensed or authorized vaccines. And so if and when an FDA decision is announced about a particular vaccine, the ACIP will have an emergency meeting with a public comment session. We will review at the public session the results of our study of the particular vaccine, including the safety and efficacy data using the GRADE and the evidence to recommendations framework. And then the ACIP will vote on recommendations for the vaccine and the populations for use. And I'll just note that ACIP recommendations could be more targeted or more detailed than the FDA conditions of use that come with licensure. After an ACIP vote, as most of you are aware, the ACIP submits recommendations to the CDC director, and if those recommendations are accepted, they're published in the MMWR and become official CDC policy. Next. So finally, I just want to again acknowledge all of my colleagues on the work group for their incredibly hard work and clear thinking and staying power. And I think there's one more slide, please. And also want to thank all of the CDC participants who are so important in the process. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bell. So we'll move on now to the next presentation, which is Dr. Lee, who will give an overview of COVID-19 vaccine safety.
Thanks very much. So I've been asked to provide this overview of the COVID-19 vaccine safety activities on behalf of the ACIP COVID Vaccine Safety Technical Subgroup. I wanted to begin with the statement, since we're an open meeting, that safety is not the absence of risk. We all take risks every day, whether it's getting on a plane to see loved ones or going outside for a walk when it's fire season on the West Coast. Safety is actually about finding an acceptable balance of benefits and risks. Next slide. There are two independent advisory committees that review vaccine safety on a regular basis. The Vaccines and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee, or VRBPAC, provides advice to the Commissioner of the FDA. The committee evaluates data concerning the safety, effectiveness, and appropriate use of vaccines for which the FDA has regulatory responsibility. The Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, as Dr. Bell noted, provides advice and guidance to the Director of the CDC, and we provide recommendations on the use of vaccines in the U.S. civilian population based on disease epidemiology, vaccine safety, vaccine efficacy and effectiveness, the quality of the evidence reviewed, economic analyses, and we consider implementation issues. Next slide. Vaccine safety data is routinely considered by ACIP work groups, and the role of ACIP is to deliberate about benefit-risk balance and recommendations for use. ACIP is routinely updated on post-market safety and effectiveness data for vaccines, and ACIP modifies those recommendations as needed. Decision-making is intended to be a dynamic process as new data and evidence emerge. For COVID-19 vaccines, a separate safety group was assembled in June 2020 to support the COVID-19 vaccine work group and the full ACIP on the safety of COVID-19 vaccines in development and those post-authorization or post-licensure. Next slide. The COVID-19 Vaccine Safety Technical Subgroup, or VAST, as I call it for short, includes 3 ACIP members, 7 consultants with expertise in coronavirus immunology, clinical trials, vaccine safety, pregnancy and risk communication, and ex officio members listed here from CDC, FDA, DOD, VA, IHS, HRSA, HHS, NIH, and BARDA. And I especially wanted to take a moment to thank our CDC lead, Dr. Tom Shimabukuro, for his leadership of this group. Next slide. The terms of reference for VAST that were put together in May of 2020 are as follows. To serve as the central hub for technical subject matter experts to, number 1, review and interpret pre-authorization or pre-licensure SARS-CoV-2 vaccine candidate safety data. Number 2, to review and interpret post-authorization, post-licensure SARS-CoV-2 vaccine safety data. Number 3, to provide advice and guidance on presenting post-authorization or post-licensure SARS-CoV-2 vaccine safety data to the COVID-19 vaccines work group, the full ACIP, and the general public. Next slide. So I'll briefly describe the work of the group to date. Next slide. We had our kickoff meeting on June 8th, which was then followed by an overview on June 22nd of vaccine-associated enhanced respiratory disease as an outcome, as this potential adverse event was important in the selection of vaccine candidates to minimize the theoretical risk of VA-ERD. On July 2nd, we had the opportunity to meet with global vaccine safety colleagues on potential adverse events of special interest, a case definition in progress for VA-ERD, and standardized Brighton collaboration templates. We then had 4 full meetings discussing the capabilities of post-market vaccine safety surveillance systems for monitoring the safety of COVID-19 vaccines, including VAERS, VSD, or the Vaccine Safety Data Link, CISA, which is the Clinical Immunization Safety Assessment Network, followed by CMS and FDA surveillance systems, the VA, Department of Defense, and Indian Health Services safety surveillance systems. And then most recently, the National Healthcare Safety Network and VSafe, which you'll hear more about today from Dr. Shimabukuro. We also recently discussed frameworks for risk communication. Next slide. I wanted to highlight two key statements that have been endorsed by the group. First, we asked our colleagues whether safety monitoring for phase 3 clinical trials should be harmonized, such as definitions for adverse events of special interest and/or the duration of follow-up. And the group said yes. Harmonization was deemed critical for timely evaluation. It would allow us to combine data, if appropriate, by maximizing the sample size for any given adverse event of special interest. It would also allow us to compare safety data across different vaccine platforms and trials, if appropriate, and enable a dynamic assessment of benefit-risk balance. The group also felt that harmonizing with international standards, such as the Brighton, was preferred. Could you move forward one, please? Next. Thank you. So in brief, similar to the FDA guidance on COVID-19 vaccine efficacy that was published this summer, the group felt that FDA guidance is needed on vaccine safety standards, and we look forward to that. Next slide. COVID-19 vaccine clinical trials that are in progress or planned are currently proposed to include between 30 to 50,000 participants per trial. These trials are really designed for efficacy, but they can also be designed for safety if sufficient follow-up is allowed. For example, rotavirus vaccine trials were specifically designed with safety as the primary endpoint in mind. The minimum duration of follow-up needed to assess safety, or the benefit-risk balance, really depends on the types of adverse events of interest, as well as the associated risk intervals. Next slide. The second question we asked was whether safety monitoring for post-authorization or post-licensure safety surveillance systems should be harmonized. There was general agreement that it was critical for timely evaluation, similar to clinical trials. Common protocols, outcome definitions, risk windows, and approaches to severity grading can support rapid evaluation of statistical signals. However, we recognize that different systems may have different capabilities, such as billing versus electronic health record data to identify exposures or outcomes, and that systems may need to align rather than fully harmonize in certain instances. Next. The group felt that the capability for timely evaluation of statistical signals would be crucial for vaccine confidence. Next. And that the coordination across post-market safety surveillance systems should be recommended, similar to our experience with H1N1 vaccine safety. Next. As a reminder, near real-time safety surveillance systems are designed to optimize sensitivity. So statistical signals should be expected in a robust monitoring program. I give two examples here. One is of syndromic surveillance performed in 4 states, which identified 62 alerts corresponding to 17 distinct signals, but only 2 true clusters of illness were detected. And more specifically, in the Vaccine Safety Data Link, Catherine Yee and colleagues published on their experience early on monitoring safety for 5 different vaccines and following 5 to 7 adverse events of special interest per vaccine. There were 10 statistical signals that occurred, but 9 out of the 10 were spurious, and only 1 was a true signal that led to a revised recommendation. Next. Timely and thorough investigations of statistical signals are needed to distinguish true associations. Next slide, please. We have adopted the SPEAK classification of adverse events, which is a safety platform for emergency vaccines group, a collaboration between CEPI and Brighton. And we anticipate bringing a prioritized list forward in future meetings. General adverse events of interest are those typically monitored for all vaccines, such as anaphylaxis. Platform-specific adverse events of interest will be based on findings from clinical trials. And population-specific adverse events of interest might include multisystem inflammatory syndrome in children, or MIS-C. Next slide. At this point, we anticipate there will be a transition in the role of VAST. During the pre-authorization or pre-licensure phase, which we're currently in, VAST will remain focused on prioritizing the adverse events of special interest. We will discuss common protocols and discuss approaches to signal refinement and evaluation. Finally, we will review and refine the membership of the data review group in the post-authorization or post-licensure phase. Once vaccine candidates are authorized or licensed for use, VAST will prospectively review, evaluate, and interpret the safety data from ongoing clinical trials and near real-time surveillance systems. VAST will advise on signal refinement and signal evaluation activities and advise on data presentation to ACIP and the public. Next. In order to succeed at this task, we highlight 6 conditions for success. First, we need the ability to capture vaccine exposure data in vaccine safety surveillance systems. We not only need clarity on the distribution processes and the documentation of vaccines administered, but we also need to ensure that this information can and will be linked to outcome data in our vaccine safety surveillance systems that are planning surveillance with COVID-19 vaccines. Second, the ability to define background rates in the general population and among those with COVID-19 disease. The former is challenging, and we rely on background rates to tell us what typical rates of outcomes might look like. But COVID-19 has changed the way that patients utilize health services, which makes it particularly challenging. And the latter is important because some of the outcomes we hope to monitor are actually seen with COVID-19 disease. So in order to best measure the benefit-risk balance or assess the benefit-risk balance, it will be important for us to have information on rates following disease as well as post-vaccination. Third, we will need to minimize conflicts of interest among members of the data review group. Fourth, we believe a learning health systems approach to vaccine safety is needed with shared review and shared learning across all COVID-19 vaccine safety surveillance systems. Fifth, we've requested and have been granted the ability for the data review group to discuss findings independently. And finally, we will need a well-developed communication plan on safety issues throughout the life cycle of vaccines. We will absolutely need strong collaboration and partnership in order to meet the needs of ACIP, our provider organizations, and the public. Next slide. So in closing, just one last reminder that we have designed our systems to detect safety signals. And it's how we collectively handle those signals that will define our country's ability to respond to COVID. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, for that presentation. Now open for questions or comments. Dr. Freihofer.
Yes, I had a question about the earlier presentation. After the ACIP recommendations are sent to the CDC director, is the HHS secretary also involved in this process?
Hi, Dr. Freihofer. This is Amanda. Let us get back and confirm that for you. Typically, under ACA, the CDC director makes the final decision and informs the HHS director. Over.
Dr. Goldman.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to comment and really stress, these presentations and how important it is that we are looking at the safety data and really taking it very seriously to make sure we can ensure public confidence in the process. And I applaud the committee for their strong work and the subcommittees for really looking into the detailed processes so that we can have a safe and effective vaccine. So thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you for those comments. Dr. Freihofer, your hand is still up. Did you have another comment?
No, I will take it down. I apologize.
Just making sure. Dr. Whitley Williams.
Thank you, Dr. Romero. Pat Whitley Williams, National Medical Association. I had a question for Dr. Lee. On the slide where you review the population-specific adverse events for special interest, the the high-risk groups were listed, including children, pregnant women, I believe the elderly, and those with comorbidities. So the question I have for you is, not with all vaccines, but certainly with, or not with all vaccine-preventable diseases, but certainly with COVID-19, there were certain populations, underrepresented populations, that have been disproportionately affected. So is there, could you please just comment on not including underrepresented minorities on that list of population-specific adverse events?
Yes. Thank you so much for that question. I really appreciate it. I will say that at this time, we're really focused more on the general and platform-specific adverse events of special interest, primarily because there are many, until we have the clinical trial data, the phase 3 clinical trial data, for all of these subpopulations, that we're not going to be able to assess which subpopulations of specific interest there will be. I thank you for bringing up, and this is not a final list per se, so thank you for mentioning the underrepresented populations, those disproportionately affected by COVID disease. They are certainly a population of consideration, and I think what we'd like to do is take a look at the clinical trials as they've been enrolling diverse populations to see if there might be any differences between those that represent underrepresented minorities versus others. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. We will move on to the next presentation by Dr. Shimabukuro on enhanced vaccine safety surveillance.
Hi, could I just get a mic check before I start? Make sure everyone's hearing me okay.
Hello? Can you hear?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, all right, great. Good morning, and today I'm going to talk about enhanced safety monitoring for COVID-19 vaccines and early phase vaccination. Next slide. The challenge we have identified for safety monitoring in early recipients is that during the early phase of a national COVID vaccination program, the initial doses may be distributed to specific groups, such as healthcare personnel and other essential workers. And in this scenario, activities to enhance traditional safety monitoring systems, such as VAERS, will be necessary. The response will include preparing our traditional monitoring systems as best we can, but also conducting active surveillance in early recipients through smartphone and email-based web surveys and obtaining vaccination and safety monitoring data from healthcare facility and long-term care facility surveillance. Next slide. Before I get into some specifics on the additional systems, I do want to emphasize our early warning system, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. Next slide. So just to remind you, VAERS is our national spontaneous reporting or passive surveillance system that's co-managed by CDC and FDA. Anyone can submit a report to VAERS. Manufacturers are required to submit reports to VAERS that come of adverse events that come to their attention. And this is just a screenshot of the VAERS website. Reporting is now all electronic, either through the portal for the public reporting or through the electronic submission gateway for manufacturers. Next slide. So VAERS has the entire U.S. population essentially covered, roughly 320 million residents. It includes all ages, all races, all states, both healthy people and those with comorbidities. In recent years, VAERS has received around 60,000 reports per year. That's just over 1,000 reports per week. Next slide. Again, VAERS serves as the nation's early warning system to detect possible safety issues with U.S. vaccines. And VAERS has traditionally provided initial data on the safety profile of new vaccines when they are introduced for use in the population. For COVID-19, our report processing times will be quick. For reports of death, it'll be 1 day. And this is from the time that the report is received until the time it becomes available to CDC and FDA for analysis. For reports classified as serious, 3 days, and reports classified as non-serious, 5 days. And CDC and FDA receive updated data sets daily. That actually happens during routine times. Every morning we get what we call a data extract, and FDA gets a data extract, and it's basically a refresh of the entire VAERS database. Next slide. So for COVID-19, FDA scientists will review all VAERS reports classified as serious, and that's also per routine. Attempts are made to follow up on all serious reports to get medical records and other medical documentation. And a serious report is defined as a report that reports death, life-threatening illness, hospitalization or prolongation of hospitalization, permanent disability, congenital anomaly, or birth defect. CDC scientists will review VAERS reports for adverse events of special interest, and CDC and FDA coordinate on the analysis of VAERS data, and both agencies conduct data mining. Next slide. This is a preliminary list of VAERS adverse events of special interest. This list is subject to change. It could expand or contract depending on the results of the phase 3 clinical trials, and also depending on surveillance data in the post-authorization period as it begins to accumulate. I'll just pause here for a minute and let you look at some of these outcomes. Okay, next slide. So this is a screenshot of an MMWR going back to H1N1. And I just put this up there to demonstrate how quickly VAERS can accumulate data and can characterize the safety profile of a new vaccine when it is authorized or approved and begins to be used in the population. And just so you're aware of the timeline on this, H1N1 vaccines were licensed in mid-September 2009. They really did not become available until well into October. The analytic period for this analysis was through November 24th, and this was published December 4th. And if you think about it, that's really just a matter of weeks from when CDC and FDA began conducting enhanced surveillance for H1N1 vaccines to the time this was published. And I think the take-home message for this initial MMW report was that the data were reassuring and that the safety profile for H1N1 vaccines was similar to that observed for seasonal flu vaccines. Next slide. So I'm going to move on to our enhanced monitoring programs to meet the challenge of COVID-19. Next slide. So the first program I'm going to talk about is called the Vaccine Safety Assessment for Essential Workers. The acronym for that is VSAFE. And VSAFE is a smartphone-based text-to-web survey, and email-to-web survey active surveillance program for early recipients. It uses contact information, so phone numbers, from the registration process for COVID vaccination of essential workers, which could be up to 20 million people during the first few months of a vaccination program. We plan to conduct health checks on vaccine recipients via text messages and email. These will be daily during the first week post-vaccination and weekly thereafter for 6 weeks post-vaccination. We also will conduct active telephone follow-up with persons reporting a clinically important adverse event during any VSAFE health check. And these health checks are basically text messages that we send out to the vaccinated individual, and the person can either respond via text or can click on a link to go to a web survey, or in cases where we don't have phone numbers, we can do this by email. And when we do conduct this active telephone follow-up, a VAERS report will be taken if appropriate. Next slide. So this is a fairly high-level overview of the information flow. So, I mean, at the CDC level, we will have access to contact information for these registered individuals. And upon notification that an individual has been vaccinated, we will begin the text messaging process that I just described on the previous slide, going out to the healthcare worker, essential worker, or other vaccinated individual. You see the two-way arrow there, meaning there's bidirectional communication, us reaching out to the vaccinated individual and them sending information back to us via text or web survey or the web survey process. And again, these will be daily for the first week of post-vaccination and then weekly thereafter out to 6 weeks. So based on the responses that we get back from the vaccinated individual, if any clinically important adverse event is reported by the vaccinated person, we will then transmit information to a call center. This is the VAERS call center, the existing call center, to follow up via phone with this individual and complete a VAERS report if appropriate. And then per usual, those VAERS reports will get to CDC and FDA. Next slide. So this is just a text version of the script. The actual web survey is formatted for the web and looks much different than this. But as you can see, this is a typical text that a person would get scripts during the first week where they're getting daily text messages. And the first part of this is just asking about local and systemic reactions. I would say the important component of this, where it gets to the active follow-up for clinically important adverse events, occurs on the right-hand side of this slide, where if an individual checks one of those 3 boxes there, you miss work, you're unable to do your normal daily activities, or you sought care from a doctor or other healthcare professional, check any one of those boxes being checked would constitute a clinically important adverse event, and then trigger that cascade of action where we send the contact information to the call center reaches out and takes a VAERS report. So you can see a clinically important adverse event as defined here is fairly general. The VAERS report will be specific, and it'll go through the normal VAERS process where we take information on the symptoms, the signs and symptoms. That will go through a meta-recoding process, and so we'll get information specifically on what kind of adverse event it was. Next slide. Next slide, please. So CDC has validated the basic text messaging collection methods for vaccine safety monitoring. Smartphone-based monitoring of early vaccine recipients will allow estimation of rates of local and systemic reactogenicity and rates of clinically important adverse events following immunization. And this type of monitoring will allow comparison of observed rates of adverse events with background rates in the population and with known rates following other types of vaccination, such as influenza. Next slide. So now I want to describe enhanced VAERS reporting using the National Healthcare Safety Network sites, COVID-19 vaccine safety surveillance, and facilitated VAERS reporting from healthcare workers and long-term care facility residents will occur through NHSN, which is a CDC surveillance system that its principal purpose is to monitor healthcare acquired infections. And this is a screenshot of the NHSN program here. Next slide. So NHSN sites will track weekly vaccine doses administered by dose number, dose 1 or dose 2, in healthcare workers and in long-term care facility residents. So this is denominator data. And the NHSN sites are well positioned to identify adverse events among COVID-19 vaccine recipients at their sites. This is the numerator data. So VAERS staff will match reports in VAERS to NHSN sites using facility address information, which basically means we can identify reports originating from NHSN sites by running two lists, the VAERS report with the NHSN facility site addresses. So we'll be able to get that numerator information specific to the NHSN sites, and then we have denominator information because we're getting that as part of some of their routine reporting requirements. And this will allow for calculation of crude overall reporting rates and adverse event specific reporting rates. Next slide. So I just want to finish up here describing some of our established monitoring systems for a general vaccination program. Next slide. And just want to make the point that our established monitoring systems are also robust and timely. I've spoken about VAERS, but VAERS reports are received and processed within days of program implementation. The Clinical Immunization Safety Assessment Project conducts case reviews upon request from U.S. healthcare providers. The Vaccine Safety Data Link and the VA Electronic Health Record Monitoring, for those systems, data are available on patients within a couple weeks of an encounter with the medical system. And then FDA CMS data monitoring, which includes 650,000 nursing home residents. The data may be available within several weeks of an encounter with the medical system in that monitoring database. And then FDA's BEST, Sentinel, and other large insurer payer databases. The data availability there are variable depending on the source, but can be available within a couple weeks to several months of an encounter with the medical system. Next slide. Next slide. So I just want to sum up by saying VAERS will play an important role in characterizing the safety profile of COVID-19 vaccines in the early stages of a vaccination program. Signal detection is of paramount importance, as Dr. Lee mentioned on her previous presentation, but VAERS data can also provide reassurances if no concerning safety signals are detected. As I mentioned in the case with H1N1, where we were able to characterize the basic safety profile of the H1N1 vaccines relatively quickly and provide reassurance to the public. Additional systems such as vSafe and NHSN will enhance traditional vaccine safety monitoring systems such as VAERS. In our traditional large link database systems like the Vaccine Safety Data Link, the CMS data, and the VA data will quickly accumulate safety data when vaccines become widely available. Next slide. So thank you, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much for that presentation. We'll now take questions. Dr. Whitley Williams, I see your hand is up.
Sorry, that's a mistake. I will put it down.
Thank you. Dr. Szilagyi.
Yeah, hi, Dr. Shimabukuro. Thank you for a very clear presentation. I was excited to see your description of the vSafe, and it is important to point out that the effectiveness of such a monitoring program depends on the adherence to the daily text, the response. So could you talk a little bit about the experience that people have had with responding to those daily texts?
Well, much of the work that has been done with text monitoring at CDC has been done in the Clinical Immunization Safety Assessment Project, and the response rates have been relatively high. In fact, surprisingly high when we're doing pregnancy studies. I can't say that will be generalizable to vSafe, but generally speaking, I would say that the response rates for text monitoring in our vaccine safety programs have been fairly good. This is a different situation. This is a much bigger program, and so we'll have to see. Specifically for the follow-up on clinically important adverse events, we are going to make multiple attempts to engage the person to get information on those what we consider clinically important adverse events. We'll say for this for vSafe, I would say absence of, or not, however you want to say it, not following up, might be an indication that of the absence of adverse events. So I would say I wouldn't. I mean, I think we need to be careful about how we interpret this data. But I mean, we're based on the previous experience with text monitoring. I mean, we're hopeful that we are going to get decent response rates.
Thank you. That's reassuring. Also reassuring to me, many healthcare workers, including myself, already are participating in daily symptom monitoring systems within our own healthcare systems. So are teachers and many other essential workers. And so I think people are just getting used to these very quick daily monitoring, and I think that will lead to high adherence. So thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Atmar.
Hi, thanks. I just had a follow-on question about the vSafe and was wondering, is this a opt-in or opt-out? Exactly how are the participants going to be, I guess, recruited to do this? Is this a condition envisioned as a condition of receipt through the EUA, or could you explain a little bit more about the onloading of participants?
So for vSafe, we are essentially borrowing or leveraging information that's being collected as part of the registration process, and that's to identify these essential workers and for scheduling and for reminder recall. So we're basically borrowing that information to conduct active vaccine safety surveillance. And part of that registration process is going to be to inform individuals that there is going to be outreach from CDC doing these health checks as part of the vSafe process. There will be an opt-out for these text messages. For example, when we do contact them initially after the vaccination, there will be the opportunity to opt out. But as far as being engaged in the program in general, that'll be part of the registration process, which again is broader than just vaccine safety. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, particularly the opportunity to opt out. With all of the discussion going on around the country and some people expressing concerns about the process of assessing the effectiveness and safety of these vaccines, there a required continued monitoring of safety after the vaccine's being rolled out could be viewed by some with concern. And I think we want the public to be reassured that any vaccine that is rolled out has gone through the appropriate review process, and this additional collection of safety information is what we do with all vaccine products, but again, it's voluntary for those who will be the initial recipients of the vaccine.
We also plan to develop some fact sheet type educational materials to be distributed at the point of service about what we're doing, why it's important, why we would appreciate their participation. So some type of physical or electronic education material at the time of vaccination. And again, there is the opportunity if individuals want to opt out once we initiate, they can do that. We also give them the opportunity to opt back in even if they've opted out. So both ways.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Atmar. Dr. Paling.
That was my question.
Thank you. Dr. Paling.
Thank you. Thank you for a very clear and helpful presentation about VAERS and the enhanced monitoring programs. There's lots, I very much appreciate the thoughtful approach to make sure we're including everybody, including our underrepresented minorities. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to share if you're going to be with the enrollment, following on what Dr. Uppner has just been talking about, VSAFE, are you going to look by race and ethnicity, seeing the enrollment rates? And then how does the National Healthcare Safety Network reflect our broad community, particularly our underrepresented minorities?
I will have to get back to you on the capture of data on race. Because we're essentially piggybacking on the registration process, I don't know off the top of my head what is collected, but I can certainly check in to see if that information is collected during the initial registration process. And then your second question on NHSN, I'm not an expert on NHSN, but my understanding is there are tens of thousands of sites in NHSN across the country. It includes acute care facilities and long-term care facilities. I'm not aware specifically if that's representative of the population as far as race and ethnicity, but I will say that there's many facilities, large population, and quite a wide reach around the United States.
Dr. Goldman.
Thank you for this presentation. Wondering if you could comment on how you see the role of community physicians in the reporting process or the enhanced reporting process.
Well, for public reporting for VAERS, it is largely voluntary. And so we depend on members of the public sending reports to us. Anyone can send a VAERS report. Patients, parents, caregivers, and of course, healthcare providers. And it's very important that we get reports from healthcare providers. And we encourage reporting of adverse events following immunization for any clinically important or clinically serious or any adverse event, regardless if the person isn't sure whether or not the vaccine caused the adverse event. So we very much encourage reporting by healthcare providers, and we will be doing education and outreach to healthcare providers. They're a very important partner in vaccine safety monitoring. The information that they provide in their VAERS reports tends to be of high quality, and we value their partnership in that. And certainly we want to make healthcare providers and healthcare facilities aware of VAERS reporting, the importance of VAERS reporting, the importance of getting quick data so we can characterize the safety profile early. And we will have education outreach efforts to the healthcare provider community to facilitate VAERS reporting.
Dr. Whitney Williams.
Sorry, my hand is not raised. I'll put it down. My apologies.
Dr. Dries.
Yes, thank you. I had a few questions around the NHSN reporting. Do you know if you will be asking facilities to report just raw numbers for both the numerator and denominator, or are you going to be asking for healthcare level or recipient level information for the numerator? I ask because most NHSN facilities are very familiar with reporting raw numbers because we do that for flu every year, but asking for patient level or healthcare worker level data would be a significantly bigger ask, particularly for those that don't have an electronic capture system.
So the NHSN reporting will be aggregate, like you mentioned. It's not individual line list type data. It's basically aggregate numerator and aggregate denominator. and with instructions and guidance on how to report the numerator into VAERS. So it's traditional NHSN style reporting where it's basically aggregate numbers.
Okay, thank you. And I assume similar to flu, it will be required. And do you know with what frequency you're going to be asking for the data to be reported?
My understanding right now is it's weekly, but I think those discussions are still occurring.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Finley.
Hi, Chris Finley. Thank you for this information. With regard to vSafe, can you clarify, will a condition for receipt of COVID vaccine be that the patient consents to allow their personal health information be shared with CDC?
I would have to defer to the immunization program on that. That's more of a program question. I don't have an answer to that. I'm sorry.
This is Dr. Cohen. I can answer that. No, that would not be required.
Dr. Coyle.
Good morning, and thank you for the great presentation. I did have a question about vSafe as well. And is it fair to assume that the information regarding the text message is going to come from the data clearinghouse that states will be leveraging for this?
I'm not sure the question you're asked. Are you talking about the where the text message originates?
Yes. Where is the data going to come from to feed that text information?
The text messaging, the actual sending out of the text messages will come from CDC. When I say CDC, I mean CDC or its IT contractors or partners that are helping us manage vSafe. So it's coming from CDC. It's not coming from the individual states out there.
Sure. No, I think the question that I'm asking is more at the individual level. So how will CDC access that information to know that they need to send a text message? Where are they getting the text message or the phone number from?
This is Dr. Cohen. I can help answer that. So the phone numbers for the text messaging will be come from the registration process through multiple IT systems connecting states, state registration processes. However, no additional private information will be shared.
Thank you.
Dr. Finley?
I'm sorry, I just can't get my hand down.
Thank you. Ms. McNally?
Thank you. I have a question. Does CDC anticipate any feasibility challenges to the launch of vSafe, whether through staffing or tech development, given the timing and scale of this? And on slide 14, where it references the Stockwell studies, were these programs on the same scale as this?
Could you go to slide 14? I'm not sure.
Hi, this is Dr. Messonnier. I actually think that those questions are probably going to be better answered when we get to the next session, which is more specifically about the implementation. So if you could wait, let's get the next session, and if you don't get your answers there, we can double back then.
Sure, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to the next session with Dr. Roth, excuse me. It's on vaccine implementation.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak today on behalf of the Vaccine Task Force at CDC. My name is Janelle Ruth. I'm the deputy overseeing the Implementation Planning Unit, which consists of 3 teams, one that works specifically with jurisdictions on their planning process. The second team is focused on planning for critical populations, and the third is working with our federal partners to help them administer vaccines to their respective populations. I'm pleased to share some information with you today about the newly released jurisdictional playbook, and then help to answer any other questions you may have about vaccine planning. So I think, as you all have heard, rollout of vaccine is likely to be a phased approach, and there's likely to be a relatively short period of time when vaccine doses will be limited. So we're really directing our state partners, jurisdictional partners, and tribal partners to think about vaccine planning in 3 phases. The first is those first 3 to 6 weeks where limited dosing will be available for prioritized populations. The second, where we start to see an increase in a larger number of doses that will help to vaccinate those other critical populations. And then finally, a third phase with sufficient doses for the population. And there we sort of switch to an emphasis on putting out vaccine to a broader population with a specific emphasis on populations that may require special consideration around distribution and equitable access. So to assist states, our jurisdictional partners and tribal nations in this planning this phased rollout of vaccine, we did release an interim playbook on September 16th with guidance for states to begin this planning process. And I wanted to talk briefly through some of the work that greatly informed the playbook contents. One, it builds on experiences from long-standing relationships of CDC staff and the National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases that they've had with immunization managers across the United States. It also leverages lessons learned from seasonal influenza campaigns, routine vaccination campaigns, and prior outbreak-associated vaccination programs such as H1N1. That said, we do recognize that the COVID-19 response will be much more complex. This long-standing expertise has really helped to design a piloting effort that we put forth this summer to help inform the playbook contents. In August, CDC and Operation Warp Speed staff met with 5 jurisdictions to assess their COVID-19 vaccine-specific plans. We chose North Dakota, Florida, California, Minnesota, and Philadelphia because of their diversity, size, and the geography of their populations. The in-person and virtual sessions were conducted with these jurisdictions and allowed us to talk through the challenges in distributing COVID vaccine. We took the feedback from these meetings and that helped to inform this interim playbook. We also had other federal participants that included the Indian Health Service and ASPR as part of these conversations. So just to highlight a few common themes that arose among all pilot sites. First was that COVID-19 vaccination is going to be a resource-intensive endeavor, likely beyond what most jurisdictions currently have available. And so current jurisdictions are really balancing their significant COVID-related responsibilities with other routine immunization programs. Second, that social distancing really does add significant logistical complexity around COVID vaccine planning, and it's important to make sure that those social distancing regulations as well as infection control practices are implemented as part of vaccine rollout. Third is that clear and transparent communication from CDC to the jurisdictions is critical. Information gaps can challenge planning, and so it's important to quickly identify those gaps so that we can solve problems before vaccine is rolled out. I'm going to be talking a little bit later about our enhanced technical assistance that we have rolled out to jurisdictions starting 2 weeks ago. I think that will hopefully help to mitigate some of those communication challenges. Fourth, that technology concerns are very much persistent among jurisdictions, and we need to be able to provide specific technical expertise in that area to make sure that jurisdictions are connected across the 4 avenues of vaccine release, including allocation, distribution, administration, and then tracking vaccine back to the source. Public confidence in the vaccine process rates among the highest concerns for jurisdictions. And I'll talk a little bit later about some of the work that we're doing in the implementation planning unit to help overcome vaccine hesitancy. We recognized in these micro-planning sessions that border communities highlight the need for clear guidance from CDC so that neighboring jurisdictions don't differ in their approach for vaccination. And to address that, we are standing up regional calls so that all of the 10 HHS regions have a chance to come together and really talk through issues that might be specific to their region. Next is that specific and uniform federal guidance on those to vaccinate in the earliest days of vaccine availability will lead to less complexity and fewer questions. So I know that our jurisdictional partners have great questions about that prioritization list, and that's driving a lot of the conversations that we're currently having. And then finally, vaccine allocation should consider the critical populations that jurisdictions expect to vaccinate and not simply be based on their populations. So as I just mentioned, the jurisdictional playbook was released on September the 16th. This is guidance for our state partners, jurisdictional partners, and tribal organizations to help think through vaccine planning. It has 15 sections that walk through all aspects of distribution and administration. This includes sections on engaging partners and establishing a COVID-19 vaccination program implementation committee to enhance the development of plans, reach of activities, and the risk crisis response in communicating message and delivery. And one thing that we've really tried to emphasize in those planning committees is making sure there is representation not just at the jurisdictional level, but at the local and tribal level as well. I'll mention here that one important aspect of the playbook is that it really does stress collaboration. So working not just across the jurisdiction, but with the local level partners, public health emergency preparedness programs, emergency management agencies, healthcare coalitions, industry groups, policymakers, and community vaccine providers to make sure that we have a well-represented committee that can think through these plans carefully. The playbook has sections that address how vaccine will be allocated, ordered, distributed, and how vaccine inventory will be managed. Most jurisdictions are planning to enroll vaccination providers to place orders using systems and procedures routinely used for ordering publicly funded vaccines, though some jurisdictions may have augmented systems for that. And in just a minute, as I get closer to talking through our enhanced technical assistance, I can outline some of those plans and systems we have in place to help jurisdictions do this micro-planning. I definitely want to emphasize that this interim playbook is a living document. We definitely plan to update the content regularly as we learn more information about what vaccines and when they will be released. Some updates that will be coming shortly will be additional information on reaching out to critical populations, like those in long-term care facilities, and again, those that need special consideration for distribution and access, like communities of color, rural populations, and those at increased risk for severe outcomes from COVID, such as the elderly. So as I mentioned, we are implementing a system of enhanced technical assistance to support this planning. The idea is really to have daily interaction with our jurisdictional partners to understand their technical assistance needs and where they're at in the development and implementation of COVID-19 vaccination plans. Our teams consist of project officers, so CDC immunization program officers, with a lot of expertise working with their jurisdictional partners. These teams are augmented by information technology subject matter experts, and as well, we did receive 10 Department of Defense Operation Warp Speed liaisons who have come with special expertise in logistics, supply, and information technology support to help augment these teams and provide additional technical assistance to the states. Teams are organized by HHS regions and are expanding to include the support and coordination with regional federal staff as well. Some of the tasks that the teams are responsible for will be to collect and analyze metrics on jurisdictional capacity, provide direct TA to individual jurisdictions, facilitate, as I mentioned, that cross-jurisdictional regional communication and collaboration so regions can learn from each other and think of creative ways to solve solutions that may have been recognized by other jurisdictions. We definitely do want to train jurisdictions on some of these data systems that will really allow jurisdictions to improve their micro-planning processes and allocation processes. One is Operation Warp Speed's Tiberius application that is in the final stages of preparation, and an internal dashboard that we're using here at CDC to help provide some visualization metrics throughout the implementation process. Our DoD staff are really taking the lead on those IT systems, and we're looking forward to them providing that additional technical assistance out to the jurisdictions. These teams then will be responsible for the review and approval of jurisdictional vaccination response plans. We expect that to occur quite rapidly after the plans are submitted to CDC. Those plans are due October the 16th, but again, I do want to mention that the reason we're providing this enhanced technical assistance is so we can track week by week how jurisdictions are coming along with these plans. So we're not just looking at the plans for the first time on October 16th, but we're really following along with states to make sure they're tracking appropriately. And if we do recognize gaps, we can organize even individual teams to go out to these states to provide that enhanced technical assistance they may need. So I'll just mention that every jurisdiction is heavily involved right now in their plan development. It was really impressive to me, even though the playbook only went out last week, states have been, and jurisdictions have been thinking about this for quite some time, and many have are almost complete with their plans. So I think we've, even though the technical assistance is ongoing, I've been very impressed at the amount of time states have already put into the planning process. So in every region, every week, we will be holding regular phone calls, again, with all 64 jurisdictions, and those regional calls will continue as well to cross-populate ideas across the different regions. We're also collecting a series of metrics to make sure, again, that jurisdictions are on track with their vaccination planning and to help us identify areas that may need additional support. So in terms of next steps, with our states, tribal organizations, and jurisdictional partners, I think one thing that we really want to do is to ensure that they work with commercial partners and federal entities. We know that we're going to need to pull in all resources, and so this is not just a jurisdictional effort alone, but partnering with commercial entities and federal partners as well will be a critical part of ensuring that vaccine gets out across all populations. We're also asking them to collect provider agreements and onboard providers to be able to receive and administer vaccine, with a particular emphasis on providers that serve critical populations. So certainly this early effort in that phase 1 limited vaccination or limited vaccine doses, we're really emphasizing jurisdictions to focus on enrolling providers that can rapidly vaccinate populations of focus as soon as vaccine is available. These would include providers at large hospitals and health systems, mobile vaccination providers, or satellite or temporary clinics, occupational health clinics, and critical access hospitals, really to ensure that we saturate that healthcare personnel population. And then the next phase, we're asking jurisdictions to really think critically about increasing that provider pool to include providers that can help expand equitable access to other critical populations and to the general public. So we're certainly encouraging them to seek providers with connections in tribal communities, rural health, and community health centers. Next is to really enumerate those critical populations who may be prioritized for early vaccine allocation, or again, as I mentioned, require special consideration for distribution and access. So one thing that we're asking them to do quite rapidly is to help us understand the number of healthcare personnel in their jurisdictions so that we can plan accordingly. Next is beginning to really engage with community stakeholders to address vaccine hesitancy. So even as we work to develop a national strategy to address hesitancy, we know that most of the critical work will take place at the state and local level. So in addition to the communication staff we have currently working in the task force on an overall national plan, in my unit, we do have a team working on developing in-depth concepts of operations for populations where we think vaccine hesitancy may be increased. We are working to engage stakeholders at a national level that can then be translated down to the state and local level so that they can begin the necessary work that they need to do in order to strengthen both overall immunization programs and COVID vaccination programs. And I think certainly we'll draw on lessons learned from our influenza colleagues since these populations are most similar to the populations likely to be first prioritized for COVID vaccination. And then finally, we're really working with our state, jurisdictional, and tribal partners to ensure that data systems have the processes they need to monitor vaccine distribution, uptake, demand, and wastage. We do have an end-to-end data initiative underway that ensure jurisdictions will have the visibility of COVID vaccine supply and the data needed to accurately administer doses of vaccine, including second doses. We're in the process of finalizing, as I mentioned, several new data systems to help with that collection, monitoring, and visualization of data necessary to mount a successful campaign. I mentioned both the OWS Tiberius platform, our internal dashboard, and other systems that jurisdictions can use to better track vaccine. So, I think with that, I will stop. I appreciate your time, and I'm very happy to take questions on the work our unit is doing or on any other aspects of the guidance that's been released to jurisdictions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Now open for comments or questions. Dr. Talbot.
Hi, good morning. This is Kip Talbot. A lot of echo. So I had a question about the October 16th deadline. I cannot imagine that we will actually know the final storage requirements for this vaccine by October 16th, which makes me a little concerned about finalizing state plans. We also don't know the best population yet when it comes to efficacy and safety. So can you tell me a little bit about why there's a deadline for October 16th? And is this a hard deadline or is this a thing to consider? Because in my mind, this would be a time to agree with you to build those connections with local and city officials and to think out of the box. But I think to have a plan when we don't have data by October 16th is somewhat premature.
Oh, thanks very much for that question. Yes, I agree that the planning process is really iterative. We are working with a current set of assumptions that we released to states back in August, but understand your point completely that we are constantly learning more about vaccine products, about storage and handling, and anticipating some information about prioritized groups to come later. So we are asking states to plan based on these assumptions, but we know those plans will constantly be improving, changing as we learn more information. The October 16th deadline was set based on the cooperative agreement regulations that states would return a plan to us 30 days after the playbook was released. So given the fact that the playbook was released on September 16th, we've set October 16th as a deadline to be able to review those state plans. Again, we are asking states to think broadly. So, in their plans, I think they should have contingencies for, whether there's an ultra cold product only or whether there's more than one vaccine product available. We're asking them to think across that spectrum. And so when we finally have our answer, they can take one of those plans off the shelf and run with it as soon as possible. Again, an iterative process. We are providing as much technical assistance as we can to help them think through these different scenarios. And although, yes, there is an October 16th deadline to return a plan, I think we will continue to work with our jurisdictional partners across the coming weeks and months to ensure that those plans are tailored as we get more information.
Yeah, this is Dr. Messonnier. Maybe I'll just add one more thing. I think it's really important to understand that we have a lot of goals here, but one goal is to be ready on the first day that we can actually distribute vaccine. Our colleagues in Operation Warp Speed say that they expect there will be vaccine as early as November, and therefore we need to be ready so that there is no delay in distributing that vaccine. And that phase, that early phase, is really close upon us. And so when we talk about planning, think of it as different phases. We have to be ready for that early phase. And so, again, based on the data provided by our colleagues in Operation Warp Speed, we've made some scenarios that we think are most likely. But as we move out into next year, more vaccines will be available and certainly more doses will be available. And so when we think about planning, we're thinking about not just the phase that is rapidly upon us, but the second phase where we'll be moving into next year. We need to be ready for the first phase imminently, but we also recognize that in a lot of ways, logistically, the movement of so much vaccine so quickly for the entire population is much more logistically challenging, and therefore we need to get started on that now.
Thank you, Dr. Hunter.
Hi, I have a supportive comment and a probing question. The supportive comment is I think the playbook is very helpful to those of us who are in the implementation because I think for like the state and local health departments, it gives us some guidelines to, on the micro level, allocate vaccines to venues being stood up by local health departments, health care organizations, community organizations, pharmacies that will serve and vaccinate the kind of groups that ACIP will be prioritizing as high groups, so that this document, I think, helps connect those dots between what we are going to be eventually voting on as ACIP of what the high-risk groups are to what really can be a venue that has a lot of those people there. So I think that's, from the little bit I've delved into the playbook, I just want to commend you guys on being real practical about that. The one thing I didn't see in my probing question is security at the sites. I'm a bit worried. The threats of violence that have been perpetrated against, especially visible leaders of public health, that have led to, in part, to the resignation of commissioners of health, like my commissioner of health in Milwaukee, as part of the reason she resigned, and the safety at the vaccination events of those threats of violence, and probably more likely, although both are pretty unlikely in my opinion, disruption of the events, not violent, but nonviolent disruption of vaccine events. And I'm just wondering if that's in a further iteration of the playbook, whether those issues will be addressed. Thank you.
I think you bring up a very good point, and I'll point out that we did conduct a tabletop exercise with Operation Warp Speed a couple weeks ago, where we went through administration at a clinic site and did think through the security concerns. I absolutely agree with you. That does need to be an update to the playbook, and we will be working on that to provide that update shortly. Thank you.
Dr. Bell.
Thank you very much. I wondered if you are able to tell us a little bit more about the tracking systems. I think, we've all have mentioned over and over again how important it is to inspire public confidence. And part of that is having a mechanism for accountability and for being able to report on how we're doing and who's getting vaccinated and highlight any issues that are developing early. So I was happy to hear that, CDC and Operation Warp Speed are working on various tracking methods, but I just wonder if you could just give us a little bit more of a sense of what kind of information will be collected and what the timing will be and who's going to be looking at the data principally and some of those kinds of considerations. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for that question. I think as I mentioned, we are in the process of finalizing a lot of these data systems to be able to roll those out to jurisdictions, both to help with their planning and also to help with tracking. So we'll definitely be able to give an update at a future ACIP meeting. I definitely can mention a couple things. One is that we do know many of the jurisdictions will be using their immunization information systems, either as they currently exist or in an augmented form to help with some of that tracking. Jurisdictions that may not choose to use that, or for clinics that may not have access to an IIS, we are in the final stages of developing a vaccine administration management system that can be used at some of these standalone clinics that will provide similar features to an IIS, as well as allowing providers to schedule appointments, register patients, and provide second dose reminders through that system. We are hoping that system is likely to be rolled out around the end of October. And again, with our regional teams, we will be able to provide some enhanced technical assistance to support jurisdictions in getting up to speed with those systems. I also did mention the OWS Tiberius platform, which will be rolled out to help states and jurisdictions do their microplanning. There is a microplanning tool as well as a dosing allocation tool that I think will be very useful. And that will also provide some additional visualization and tracking as we move forward into the implementation process. Thank you.
Ms. McNally.
Thank you. So as it relates to vSafe, can you talk about the plan for the date to launch that program?
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I didn't quite hear that.
Yes, I'm curious about the implementation of vSafe, as I know that the timing is tight. So I'm just wondering if there is a firm date for the launch of that program.
Hi, this is Dr. Messonnier. I think I understand. So the program that Dr. Shimabukuro was talking about, the vSafe program, our plan is to launch that with the first distribution of vaccines. So we'll be doing all the trial runs and backstopping piece to sort of make sure that there are no flaws in the system. But we're only going to launch it with the first release of vaccine. And, we partly developed that system with an expectation based on ACIP deliberations of the first groups that would be prioritized for vaccination with is the healthcare workers. We can have a follow-up presentation at another meeting about this end-to-end data systems. So I think we've gotten a couple questions about that, but it sort of all kind of comes together where there's a tool that folks can use to sort of register for the vaccination sites, sort of to help with clinic management. There's a tool for this VSAV where you basically get enrolled in that, and then your data gets rolled over so that it gets, it populates the registry systems, and then sort of frankly dumps back in so that the state and local health departments can use it, and CDC gets an extract of it so that we can also keep track of uptake and ensure that vaccine is being allocated appropriately. So we can put that on the agenda for next meeting because I think it will help explain how all these systems work together. Over.
Thank you, Dr. Messonnier.
Dr. Talbot, your hand is still up. Is that a residual from your last question?
Yes, I apologize.
Just making sure. If there are no other questions, then this session is over. We'll now break for lunch.